Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, editor-in-chief of thenationalpulse.com. Well, it's a fight night here in political world, and it'll come as no surprise to you that our show today is about debates. And as somebody who has helped prep leaders for debates, as someone who has participated in any number of political debates, I thought we'd do something a little different on this show today, and that comes in the form of Natalie Winters interviewing me about what to expect tonight at the hotly anticipated Biden versus Trump showdown. But before that, I just wanted to reflect on something really, truly sad that has been taking place in the background of this whole political campaign so far. We're used to seeing celebrities going off the rails. But there was one interview yesterday that made me really very, very sad. Yesterday, Nicole Wallace interviewed Jeff Daniels on MSNBC. It's obvious what's happening here. The actor, worth around $50 million, has a new show coming out where he plays Jim Comey, and very few people seem to care. So along comes Nicole Wallace and MSNBC to help prop up Daniels and his fading attempt to rescue his own career and that of former FBI Director Jim Comey. At the end of the interview, Wallace asks Daniels about his thoughts on Russia and the so-called Russia interference we now know amounted to just a few Facebook ads, most of which were seen by Americans after the 2016 election, and many which were relatively anti-Donald Trump. Here's what MSNBC viewers were treated to yesterday.
A question about the miniseries. I mean, do you think that there is an explanation that is known to all of us yet for why all the lies about Russia?
It's not known to us yet, no. No, it's not known to us yet. But if it were a Hollywood script, they would kick it back because the bad guy's too obvious. I mean, look.
That's certainly...
I mean, it's just a badly written bad guy. I mean, it's so transparent. And the fact that I believe it was the New York Times today wrote an article about Putin reaching out to maybe call a truce on the cyberspace thing with, America,
right.
Though admitting nothing, right? That's Putin getting into the lifeboat on the Titanic. Okay? What are they talking about in Helsinki? What were, all the stuff? I mean, there's all of that. The tax returns that he won't show us. It's so obvious. And where is he getting the money? Where did he get all the money? And I mean, all roads, as Speaker Pelosi said, all roads lead to Putin. And, time's running out. This is a bad movie we're living through. That's what this is. If it weren't so life and death, it's a bad movie.
Well, Jeff Daniels would know a few things about bad movies, but listen closely to what these people really believe. All roads lead to Putin. All roads lead to Putin. There's a man in charge of a country with an economy the size of Italy's or New York State, halfway around the world, who is living rent-free in the heads of millions of Americans. And why? Because Putin's Russia represents something far and away different from the Russia these people all celebrated back in the 1960s. Instead, of course, they now cozy up to the Chinese Communist Party. And Jeff Daniels would know a few things about the Chinese Communist Party. Because, well, the Chinese Communist Party is buying out and buying up Hollywood studios. But I digress. There is one Jeff Daniels show which I really enjoyed, and that was Newsroom. Yes, it's another Aaron Sorkin liberal love fest over themselves, but as a news junkie, I couldn't help but fall for the premise of the show. A Republican anchor inside a network run by liberals and moderates who puts his foot down over the importance of the truth in the story. But I guess Jeff Daniels and his unqualified all roads lead to Putin didn't take as many lessons away from his character, Will McAvoy, as I did. Actually, maybe he took the wrong lessons away. Here's a clip from the Newsroom where Jeff Daniels is curiously fantasizing over texting with none other than Vice President Joe Biden.
You checked your emails.
15 seconds ago.
When was the last time you did? Look at your BlackBerry. Press the buttons!
Sure. Okay, not tonight, but in days to come, you'll look back and think that this moment was funny.
It's from 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
What does it say?
OBL reportable. Knock 'em dead, just like we did.
Who's it from?
Joe Biden.
Are you kidding me?
We used to play softball together when he was in the Senate. He knows something about the landing leg.
Get on the air!
It's a great clip. It was a great show. And by the way, Joe Biden wasn't in favor of the OBL, the Osama bin Laden raid, but never mind, we'll paper over those cracks because that's Aaron Sorkin's newsroom. But I guess Nicole Wallace didn't pick up anything from that show either. Instead of pushing back on Jeff Daniels' Russia claim, she grinned, giggled, and nodded along gleefully like the obedient little deep state propagandist that she is. I wish she had listened to Will McAvoy when he was teaching a fellow reporter how to do the news. Let's roll it.
So I'm hosting Elliot's show tonight.
I know, I'm the one who suggested you.
You really think I can do it?
No, I have no idea. So, we're gonna find out.
All right. Well, your exuberant confidence notwithstanding, I have the spokesperson
From TEPCO, I know.
He just told me off the record that reactor 3 is causing what is a level 7, not a level 5 radiation leak. What's the trick to getting him to say it on the record?
There is no trick. You just don't stop until he tells the truth.
What do you mean you don't stop?
I mean you don't stop. Sloan, I watch your show at 4 o'clock, and you're brilliant, but you let guests say things that I know you know aren't true, and then you just move on. Ask the damn follow-up, and then demonstrate with facts how the guest is lying. You can't just sit there and be a facilitator for whatever the guest wants to feed your viewers. They're not coming on to plug a movie. It's not Jimmy Kimmel. You knowingly, passively allow someone to lie on your air, and maybe you're not a drug dealer, but you're sure as hell the guy who drives the dealer around in your car, so maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. Show me something.
Got it.
Do you?
Yeah.
They're not coming on to plug a movie. You let them say things that are untrue, and then you move on. Nicole Wallace, j'accuse. And sure, it's a leftist, and it's Hollywood, and it's MSNBC, so what am I here whining about? Well, because these people get a free pass over and over and over again, and I'm sick of it. The staff at Media Matters get a free pass. The New York Times gets a free pass. Liberal professors get a free pass. Black Lives Matter, Antifa, Planned Parenthood, Joe Biden. They all get free passes. No more free passes. I told you on the first show we ever did, who watches the watchers? We do. And I don't mind being watched in return. I don't mean being quizzed in return. I don't mean being mocked if I get something wrong, because hey, that can happen. It's not very often, but it can happen. And speaking of mockery, I thought one of my followers on Twitter said it best about Jeff Daniels last night. Dumb and Dumber was a role and not a lifestyle, Mr. Daniels. If you're going on national television and spouting off lies while trying to promote your latest movie, maybe Nicole Wallace isn't going to hold you accountable, but we are. When we come back from the break, a little change in the tactics here. Natalie Winters will be holding me to account over what to expect in tonight's debate, and will be joined by lawyer Thomas Farnan, author of The Russia Lie, to discuss how no roads actually ended up leading to Putin. This is the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. I just want to make something clear for the audience here on Real America's Voice, that we will be doing a live pre-game of the debate. So whether you follow us on Roku, on Apple TV, on Pluto, on Dish, on Comcast in Chicago and well beyond. Make sure you stick around today, this evening, 7 o'clock tonight. We'll kick off here. I'll be around. We've got Amanda Head here. We've got Governor Eric Greitens here. You've got Raheem Kassam going to be here in the Washington, D.C. studio. We may have a few big guests for you tonight as well. So make sure you stick around for all of that. It's going to be 8 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be very interesting here on Real America's Voice. We'll bring you uninterrupted coverage of the debates and then a little post-game analysis as well. So you don't need to go anywhere. We've got you covered right here on Real America's Voice. Somebody else who's got the bases covered, I hope. Natalie, this is your big break. You're going to be interviewing me now about the and somebody in the live chat right now says pull no punches, I think. So let's have it. I didn't figure it was a good idea for me to have somebody else on to interview, because I have lived so many experiences in preparing for debates like this, preparing for moments like tonight, and I've actually spoken to a lot of people who are relatively in the know about what's going on tonight. So before we jump right into your line of questioning, I want to just discuss a few things. So this morning we heard that Joe Biden's campaign didn't want to approve of effectively what was an ear cavity search ahead of the debate. I mean, it's genius messaging from the Trump campaign as to whether or not there was a real threat, or remains a real threat, of Joe Biden sneaking an earpiece into that debate. I mean, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that they might try something like this. You can get these very small devices now that fit right in your ear. You couldn't even tell by looking at somebody that they've got something in their ear. But they also wanted a 15-minute break every 30 minutes. This was what the Biden campaign suggested that they wanted. I mean, that's not great optics as far as the Biden campaign's concerned. So just before you get to me, anything else sticking out to you here?
Well, this actually dovetails with my first question, and that was going all the way back to August. We heard Nancy Pelosi say that, quote, the debate shouldn't even happen. She echoed that statement little less than a week ago. Again, with coronavirus, we weren't even sure if these debates were going to happen. So my initial question to you, and again, we've seen this coming from the Biden campaign all the way up to a few hours before the debate, are you surprised that the debate's even happening in the first place?
I don't think I'm surprised that the debates are happening. I mean, it would have basically been throwing in the towel for the Biden campaign if they said, our guy's not going to debate you. I mean, they could have come up with any number of excuses. It could, there could have been illness, there could have been a death in the family, there could have been anything. As far as I think the American voting public was concerned, even though it's a small chunk of people who haven't decided how they're voting yet, or at least that's the way they're talking to pollsters, I think it would have been a damning condemnation of how poorly prepared the Biden campaign was to take on President Trump. So I don't think there was a real chance of him fully pulling out. I still have this little wild card in my head that halfway through, Joe Biden sort of might turn to the side of the stage and go, well, actually, Kamala Harris is far better equipped to answer this question than I am, and brings Kamala on, and then just kind of takes a couple of steps back and lets her take over the rest of the debate. That, by the way, that wouldn't be so crazily out of the question for somebody like Joe Biden, because he would see it as, I'm empowering a woman, I'm empowering a person of color, and his campaign would think that that's how the world would see it, whereas in reality the world would see it as an old man tapping out.
Exactly. So then I'm curious, from your perspective, the optics of refusing an earpiece check, the optics of refusing a drug test, even the optics of calling for a break every 30 minutes. Why is the Biden campaign doing this, knowing that many Americans, that the polling on it is crazy in terms of people who believe that Joe Biden has clearly declined mentally, his cognitive ability is already under question. So why are they so brazenly insisting that Joe Biden won't have a test on his earpiece, won't take a drug test, wants breaks?
There's only so much you can pretend in a situation like this. There's only so much bravura that can go into this. I mean, look at how many, you were the one that did the story. How many lids has the Biden campaign called in the last 2 weeks? I think it's up to 10 now. Before 10 a.m., a lid on the campaign. What that effectively means is that the world will not hear from or see the candidate for the rest of the day. We're 30 days out from a national election for the most important office in the world, and they're calling lids. they're calling lids because they're prepping him. He's being prepped, and I'll get to more of those details after this break. Make sure you're heading over to thenationalpulse.com, ladies and gentlemen, and .com/support. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Pulse. I just want to be very clear about something. Natalie Winter's interviewing me about the debates tonight, and I want to be very clear about something, Natalie. And as far as I know, you've never lied to the audience, right? I guess that's my job, to make sure that you're not lying to the audience at any point. But I just want you to. I don't know what questions you're going to ask me.
Yes.
And you even tried to tell me one of the questions in the break. I said, I don't want to know.
There's no Donna Brazile, Hillary Clinton setup here.
This is all extemporaneous. You have your questions. I don't know what you're going to ask me. And so all my answers are, I've got no prep in front of me here. I'm just, if you want to see what's on my screen, I'm watching myself. So I don't know what you're going to ask me. But I want to come back to your last question very quickly about the optics behind all of this. Look, optics will only get you so far in politics. If you can't back anything up, if you can't even back up the candidate with action, then you're not going to get very far. That's why people were very surprised about Donald Trump winning in 2016. They thought the whole thing was just optics, right? They didn't realize that the policy positions were actually very much in tune with what the real Americans out there wanted. And actually, while we're on that subject, can we play this audio clip? This is from Nigel Farage, a podcast that came out from the Telegraph just this morning. The Telegraph newspaper, biggest conservative newspaper, or at least right-leaning newspaper in the United Kingdom. He was interviewed about how we first came across Donald Trump as a political figure, and I was very impressed with what Nigel had to say. Let's roll this.
I was in New York, and I'm talking now 2014, and I got a message from the Trump group that he wanted to meet me, and we couldn't make it happen. We could not make it happen. And the person that approached me from the Trump organization said, oh, he's been watching your speeches in the European Parliament, and that's why he wants to meet you. So we didn't get a chance to meet, and that was unfortunate. But as 2015 came along, and he announced that he was going to run for the presidency, I got some more info that he'd actually been watching my stuff.
It was late 15, because of course,
yes,
early May 15 was your moment. You got 12% in the polls at the election. You did really well. You won one seat.
Well, I think 14 was a bigger moment, really. I mean, in a
14,
sense...
15, yeah, that was the Euro elections.
In a sense, you know, the fact that UKIP was the first party that wasn't Labour or the Conservatives since 1906 to win a national election, which we did in the European elections, I think that was really the moment, in a sense, that America woke up to who's this Nigel Farage guy.
Yeah, and he saw that and thought, I want a bit of that.
And thought, that's interesting.
Okay, so we're in late 15.
So we're late 15, and, you know, he's announced that he's going to have a run at the presidency. And a colleague of mine, in fact, somebody who'd worked for me called Raheem Kassam, went out to watch Trump speaking around the country. And he said to me, Nigel, he said, this is real. He said, I can see something happening on the ground, just like it was with you in 2012, 2013, when UKIP were bubbling away. He said, no one in New York is noticing. The media don't get this. They all think it's incredibly funny. He said, I've seen the audiences at these meetings and something's going on. So it was Raheem Kassam that really put me onto the fact that he was having a real go. So I kind of, as that went on, I got bits of feedback that the Trump guys, you know, liked what I was doing, agreed with the messaging, and that, I thought, well, that's great. Then what happened was Brexit. Brexit happens in June. Trump very publicly saying that he thought it was the right thing to happen.
And that's before the vote. He flew in, didn't he? And said before Brexit Day,
that's
he
right.
thought,
and
we'll go for Brexit.
He said it was the right thing to do.
Well, Nigel's one of the better debaters out there. Really wiped the floor with Nick Clegg ahead of the European Union referendum that we had in the United Kingdom. And there you have Nigel Farage talking about how he came to know of President Trump's race. Little-known guy called Raheem Kassam apparently turned him on to Trump. I thank Nigel for the shout out there, because he didn't need to say that, but I appreciate it. I thought I'd bring it to the audience. look, there's only so far optics can take you, right? And if your guy can't agree to having his ears checked for a device or having a blood test or a urine test ahead of the debate, then he's not going to agree to it, right? Because there's something there that's amiss. And everyone out there who's looking into this right now will know that there's something out there amiss about the way the Biden campaign's approached this debate.
Exactly, and I think when they're calling lids half the time, often at 9:20 a.m., and as Joe Biden revealed on his personal podcast, he likes to wake up at 8 a.m., meaning that this debate he'll be on stage for 90 minutes, so that'll be probably the longest we've ever really seen him standing on stage and talking.
He said he likes to try to wake up at 8 a.m.
I buried the lead on that one.
Exactly. It's like, what does that look like for Joe Biden? I'd like to try to wake up. It's not happening. Go back to sleep.
And we know it's because he feels comfortable that the media will kind of run interference for him and cover for him. And speaking of other groups that are interfering in the election and keen on securing a Biden victory, really by any means necessary, you have groups, obviously, we've covered the Transition Integrity Project, and they're the ones who are perpetuating the narrative that Donald Trump is the one undermining the norms in this election, right? He's preventing a free and fair election from happening. But in reality, you see Joe Biden refusing to take drug tests, refusing to say, no, you can check my ears for any listening devices. So there's an interesting double standard there. But I'm curious how you see this debate will play into the Transition Integrity Project's hands. Like, for example, in 2016, Chris Wallace tried to get President Trump to admit that he wouldn't concede the election, and that's a narrative they've kept over in this election cycle, right? From the Transition Integrity Project, Hillary Clinton saying Joe Biden shouldn't concede. So I'm curious, do you think they'll ask Trump, will you concede the election? Will they try to portray him as some...
Yeah, unfortunately, I do believe that Chris Wallace will do that. And not that Chris Wallace is a bad interviewer, but he does still play to the Washington mindset, the consensus mindset. And the consensus mindset is currently that it's Trump that's the problem in D.C. It's his clinging to power that we'll have to fight after November the 4th. So he will ask that question. He'll probably ask a couple of other stupid questions as well, because if he doesn't, he'll get pilloried by the Washington set. He won't get invited to the Christmas parties, which are coming up very quickly. He won't get the pay rise from his bosses, James and Lachlan Murdoch. So there are all these factors at play here that make a moderator like Chris Wallace not actually be a moderator who's there to do the bidding of the American people, which is to vet these two candidates for office, but actually he's going to be doing some vetting for and on behalf of the Washington establishment. And we can talk about more of that when we come back in just a second. Got to go to another quick break here on thenationalpulse.com. Coming up later on in the show, Thomas Farnan, lawyer and author of The Russia Lie. Make sure you go to therussialie.com in the break. Get your ebook by Thomas Farnan. It's fantastic. And we'll be right back. Well, if you're just joining us, Natalie Winters is grilling me about what I think will take place tonight at the Trump versus Biden debates. And make sure you're tuned in here on Real America's Voice from 8 p.m. The pre-game show will show the entire debate through, and then the post-game analysis with myself, with Governor Eric Brightons, with Amanda Head, and the whole team here at Real America's Voice. We'll see you then. In the meantime, back to Natalie Winters. Natalie, I haven't got a lot of time left here. You haven't been using your time to grill me hard enough. What's your next question?
Well, we were speculating about the questions that Joe Biden would be asked, and Donald Trump. So I'm curious, do you think that Chris Wallace will grill Biden on his son's business dealings? Do you think he'll grill him on his mental health, on some of the more maybe outre issues?
I think he might ask about Hunter Biden, certainly. I mean, because if he doesn't, he can be assured that probably President Trump will bring it up himself. So I think Chris Wallace will want to make sure that he's at least seen to be grilling both sides equally on the things that are of most make them most fragile. up on that stage. I don't know about the mental health thing. I think a lot of people in Washington will try and convince Wallace away from that. A lot of people in the news environment can try and convince Wallace away from that because it'll be seen as a cheap shot, right? Then you've got a doddery old man on stage. Don't ask him if he's wearing Depends or not, you know. And so I don't expect that to come up. What I do expect to happen, however, and this is more of a case of strategy and tactics than it is, you know, what we would expect from a moderator. I think early on in the debate, you'll probably see, and not literally, this is just how I would do it, right? So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I would let Joe Biden attack first if I were the president. I would give him about a minute or two to really get his, you know, come on man, comp up sort of thing out of the way. Then push him back, attack back, get something out of him. Either send him off on one of his little rants where he, you know, goes, you know the thing, or he gets angry. Because Joe Angry at his peak was actually quite good, but Joe Angry at this point of his life is kind of, you know, old man shouts at cloud kind of thing, right? So then let Joe attack again. That will basically use up all of Joe's steam for the rest of the debate. This is why he wants breaks, by the way. He's worried about losing steam up there. And be very, very aware of Joe holding on to anything that's around him, lecterns or whatever it is, right? You'll just watch for that. Then, once he's run out of steam and he looks sad and doddering and if he's rocking back and forth, then if I were President Trump, I would actually turn to Joe and I'd be like, look, I don't feel good about this. This is actually quite sad. Are you okay? Like, do you need a break? We can just, if you need a break, just let me know. And that would really hammer the point home in a mean and aggressive way, sort of a passive aggressive way. But actually a lot of people will look at that and go, yeah, he does actually look like he needs a break. So that's something that I really think the president could use to his advantage this evening.
So also concerning the strategy, putting the optics aside, do you think it's a more effective line of attack for President Trump to go after Joe Biden as, you know, outsourcer in chief and how he supported most favored nation status, China entering the World Trade Organization, a host of measures that led to the outsourcing of millions of American jobs, or really hammering down on Hunter Biden's business dealings and how the family is so corrupt? Granted, they kind of complement each other.
I think there's room for both. There's definitely room for both. I mean, dragging Hunter in will definitely upset Joe, and if that's where you want to take, if that's where you want to lead Joe, then yeah, you'll bring up Hunter. I think the president needs to lean in to all of his policy achievements. So what you do is you create a stark juxtaposition. I stand for this, and here's what I've done. Bringing jobs back, you know, even the things that you know, libertarian conservatives don't like the farm subsidies. He needs to lean into those achievements and say, look, this is the hard and rough and ugly way that we are going to get jobs back from China. This is just the way it has to happen. Joe, what have you done? Or oh wait, when you were in office, you were the one that was shipping those overseas. And then don't let him run away with the answer. Just keep rolling through your list of achievements. And the things that the president is supposedly weakest on, for instance, the pandemic, this is what the media tells us, and the taxes, I would lean further into those if I was President Trump. I would say, listen, they told us 2.5 million dead at the beginning of this thing. You guys are cheerleading over 200,000, you sick people, right? And then secondly, the taxes. Donald Trump, I stand up there, I would literally say, listen, there is not a businessman or woman in this country who tries to pay more taxes than they have to pay. And the only people who are upset about this are the writers at the New York Times who have never set up a business in their lives, who have never had to worry about employing people, who have never had to worry about how much money you're throwing away, whether it's to the city or federal government, to send to Joe Biden and to send his kid overseas to make $1 billion from the Chinese Communist Party. Bring it all back together.
Exactly, and it goes back to a brilliant line, I think, from the Trump campaign, where Donald Trump has done more in 47 months than Joe Biden has done in 47 years. So I think probably my last question for you is, overall, throughout the debate, do you think it's a more effective strategy for President Trump to hammer Joe Biden as a hardcore globalist, someone who's overseen managed decline for decades, really a member of Washington's elite permanent political class, or to really emphasize that he is a Trojan horse for the radical left, for the AOC wing of the Democratic Party?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure I even have an answer to that question yet. I mean, the smart money's on both. You throw as much up against the wall and see what sticks, right? But I don't necessarily see that there is an overt tie between Joe Biden and the radical left, right? Like, he's not been that guy for his whole life, and a lot of people will reject that idea of Joe Biden. Now, they'll think of him as weak and that he can be beaten down by and pushed around by the far left, and that's something you can certainly use. You can say, hey, Joe, AOC went out there and she said, as just the news reported, she said that if you're in office, she's going to push you to the far left. You got this little Sandy chick saying she's going to push you around. You know, what about that? So I think that's possible. Also, the trick is not to get tied up in a lot of Washington speak. You know, manage a decline. There's a better way of saying something like manage decline without necessarily sounding like and turning the entire audience off. And just finally, I think something that is always of interest to a sartorial expert like myself about these events is what they come out wearing, right? And I think the prevailing consensus will be that Trump will wear red Trump and Biden will wear blue Biden, right? And I'm just not sure that's true. I'd watch for either a gold Trump tie or even a blue Trump tie tonight. It's different. It says a different thing about you. We'll be back with more National Pulse after this break. Good morning. It's Sunday morning. Oh, wait, that's my Nancy Pelosi impression. Welcome back to the National Pulse. Tuesday, September the 29th, the year of our Lord 2020, Fight Night here in Washington, D.C., and indeed all around the country. I'm sure we'll see record-breaking viewership for tonight's debate. I want all of you to stay tuned here on Real America's Voice. We got the pre-game show from 8 p.m. You know, really, guys, we couldn't have done before 8 p.m. I've got lots to say, and 8 to 9 isn't long enough, especially when we've got other anchors trying to get their 2 cents in. I'm going to push very hard to get an earlier opening, but if you subscribe on your Roku device, on your Apple TV, on your YouTube, Real America's Voice, you'll make sure you get notifications when we go live with our debate show this evening. You're not going to want to miss it, and you're not going to want to miss the after show as well, the post-game analysis, specifically because I intend to have a lot of whiskey during the debate. So we're going to have a lot of drinking games here in the studio for the every time Joe says, "Come on, man," that's, I think, 2 fingers of whiskey, and we've got a whole setup going on. In the beginning of the show, I told you about Jeff Daniels and Jeff Daniels' snooze fest of an interview yesterday with Nicole Wallace. But there was one part that stuck out for me, is when Jeff Daniels said all roads lead to Putin. Well, it's good timing as far as Thomas Farnan is concerned, lawyer and author of TheRussiaLie.com. I want to make sure we get the book on screen as well. The Russia Lie is available now exclusively at TheRussiaLie.com. Thomas, thank you so much for joining us here on the National Pulse today. Let me just start by asking you this question up front about what Jeff Daniels said on MSNBC. Do all roads lead to Putin?
No. As I explained in my short, readable 40-page book, buy it for $5 on the National Pulse website at TheRussiaLie.com. All roads lead to the DNC. And the DNC was engaged in disinformation, and it was disinformation to the effect they were trying to connect Trump to Putin. And the DNC was assisted in this effort by none other than the FBI and the CIA and foreign intelligence services. And it's really the biggest political scandal in American history. Beats Watergate by a factor of 100, 1,000. You pick the number. I'll tell you one thing that you can't say Putin had anything to do with. I don't think he had anything to do with anything here, and I prove that in the book. But Putin didn't cause the FBI to make CrowdStrike inspect the DNC computers. The DNC insisted that CrowdStrike do the inspection. CrowdStrike was compromised. This was being called the crime of the century. Can't we expect our law enforcement bodies to do the inspection? No, we have a DNC private contractor doing the inspection. And we hear emanating from that inspection that CrowdStrike proved that Putin hacked, that Russia hacked the computers. We learned this year that CrowdStrike's president gave sworn testimony in Congress 3 years ago where he said, we have no evidence of a Russian hack. That's amazing. Circumstantial, and what does that mean? But no direct evidence of a Russian hack. And in the book, I go through CrowdStrike and how they are compromised. I think one of the passages of the book I want to bring up is how CrowdStrike was in 2016 engaged very obviously in a different operation on behalf of Ukraine to raise a false Russian flag for political reasons for them. I say those who assert it is a conspiracy theory to say that CrowdStrike would fabricate the results of computer forensic testing to create a false Russian flag should know that it was caught doing exactly that around the time it was inspecting the DNC computers. On December 22nd, 2016, CrowdStrike caused an international stir when it claimed to have uncovered evidence that Russians hacked into a Ukrainian artillery computer app to help pro-Russian separatists. Voice of America later determined that the claim was false, and CrowdStrike retracted its finding. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense was forced to eat crow and admit that the hacking never happened. If you wanted a computer testing firm to fabricate a Russian hack for political reasons in 2016, CrowdStrike was who you went out and hired. And as we show in the book, CrowdStrike at its highest levels is connected to something called the Atlantic Council, which is a Washington, D.C. pro-NATO think tank that didn't like some of the things that then candidate Trump was saying about maybe we don't need NATO expansion. Maybe we should take a look at this stuff. And I think very obviously it's a political operation. But what I wanted to say to Jeff Daniels is there's no way to say that Putin had anything to do with the FBI selection of CrowdStrike.
Thomas, I'm getting some breaking news. I don't know if you've seen this. About 20 minutes ago, there was a declassification of this document. This has been tweeted by the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., as well as others. This has got John Radcliffe's signature on the bottom of it, and it's addressed to the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham. I'm going to read some of this to you right now, and I don't know if you've seen this yet, Tom. It says, in late July 2016, U.S. intelligence agencies obtained insight into Russian intelligence analysis alleging that U.S. presidential candidate Hillary Clinton had approved a campaign to stir up a scandal against U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump by tying him to Putin and the Russians' hacking of the Democratic National Committee. The IC does not know the accuracy of this allegation or the extent to which the Russian intelligence analysis may reflect exaggeration or fabrication. According to his handwritten notes, former CIA Director Brennan subsequently briefed President Obama and other senior national security officials on the intelligence, including the alleged approval by Hillary Clinton on July 26, 2016, of a proposal from one of her foreign policy advisors to vilify Donald Trump by stirring up a scandal claiming interference by Russian security services. Tom, we have to go to a quick break now. I'm going to text this to you in the break. Hopefully we can go through this in the next segment here. This is live breaking news here on the National Pulse. We'll see you back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. This is Real America's Voice. Welcome back to the National Pulse. We're dealing with some breaking news right here, and we've got just the best guest you could possibly wish as an anchor to have on while news like this breaks. Thomas Farnan just wrote a book called The Russia Lie that you can get at therussialie.com, and we're finding out in real time. I mean, I know, Thomas, that for people like you who have been involved in exposing so much of this, that I guess sometimes it can be a yeah, I told you. I told you this. We knew this already moment. But for a lot of the world, this is the smoking gun that people have been waiting for. This document that just made its way to Lindsey Graham from John Ratcliffe, the Director of National Intelligence. And there was one more bullet point. I didn't get through all of them before we had to hit the break. There was one more bullet point here that I want to read out for the audience and get your response to this. It was on September 7th, 2016. U.S. intelligence officials forwarded an investigative referral to FBI Director James Comey and Deputy Assistant Director of Counterintelligence Peter Strzok regarding U.S. presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's approval of a plan concerning U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections as a means of distracting the public from her use of a private email server. Thomas, this confirms everything the so-called tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists, far right, fringe, QAnon, you name it, they've thrown pejoratives at all of us. This confirms the whole lot, doesn't it?
Well, as you pointed out, I've thought it's been confirmed for a long time. I'm a litigator, and I'm in the business of gathering evidence, and I know we have enough evidence that this was a false flag operation, that the Clinton campaign was involved, that the FBI was enlisted, that CrowdStrike, which is a DNC contractor, was used as part of the fabrication. We've had that evidence for a long time. The sequencing of when Guccifer 2.0 becomes involved. The false Russian fingerprints on Guccifer 2.0's documents. This stuff has all been ferreted out for a long time. If I was litigating this case against the DNC and we were facing, a trial by jury tomorrow, they would come to me and they would say, let's settle, because they would know I have so much evidence. But yes, this is further confirmation. And
this, Thomas, this says that Brennan briefed Obama on Hillary's plan to have this whole fake, phony thing take place, effectively not just to attack Trump, to attack the election, to attack everything that Americans voted for. This is unprecedented. You called this at the beginning of this interview, you called this the biggest scandal in United States political history, and you are being proven right in real time, in live breaking news on this show, Thomas.
Yeah, I agree. And these people always have a story. They always have an explanation. They're going to say that's just more Putin disinformation. And they also have a very compliant media. And you're not going to read this in the manner that you presented it here at the National Pulse. You're not going to read it that way tomorrow in the New York Times or the Washington Post or even in the Wall Street Journal. One of the things I say in my book is that all of Washington is very interested in us having a bare-chested enemy on horseback in the East. And, they want to distract us from some other things. But in this case, they were using that against Trump. It's a political operation against Trump. And I agree, this is a smoking gun, but this is a case with so many smoking guns. They have no way out. You're not going to read it the way you presented it tomorrow in the newspaper, because the media...
Thomas, you have little faith, though, because there is an event taking place tonight where somebody could force it into the news cycle for tomorrow. I take your point that it's not going to be framed. It'll be caveated with maybe an if and speculation, and this comes straight from the desk of QAnon or whatever it is, right? But there is a man on stage tonight that has the ability to go in there with this piece of paper in his hand, look across the auditorium at Joe Biden falling asleep at his lectern and say, "Gotcha," right?
Well, here's what they're going to do, and this is why the Russia lie is so important. So many Republicans have conceded that Russia interfered. And Chris Wallace could read him a question. Lindsey Graham, others have said that Russia interfered. In Helsinki in 2018, you said you didn't think Russia interfered in the election. And he'll read this notable list of conservatives and Republicans who said Russia did interfere, and he'll say, are you willing to admit now, Mr. President, that Russia interfered in the election? So it's a difficult nut to crack. It's a political operation, but I do agree we have the perfect person at the podium tonight to do it. He's not...
Thomas.
Yes.
We've just got 2 minutes left here. All right, I just want to tell the audience this. I mean, you think sometimes that these things all seem very coincidental, and sometimes they just are. I mean, Thomas, we worked for how long? I mean, you worked on actually the copy of the book, but we worked for how long in getting the book together, releasing, I would say now that we know what we know, what's coming out today, just on time. You had this incredible op-ed, it's an excerpt of the book that came out on the National Pulse this weekend, talking about how the entire Russia saga was cooked up to attack a political outsider. That was the actual title of the article we ran this weekend. The Russia lie was a Washington political hit on an outsider. That is what these declassified documents say. Hillary Clinton was in on it. Barack Obama knew about it. John Brennan briefed the president that this was a political scam being used to try and capture the Oval Office as a result of all of this. With 1 minute left to go, Thomas, what's next? Where do we go from here?
These people don't go away, and they keep fighting, and they keep lying, and they keep turning the news cycle or attempting to turn the news cycle against Trump. And I agree that Trump is the perfect person to ride a wave like that. But I think what's next is people need to know the facts. And we've compiled the facts in a very readable, very entertaining 40-page book that you can get for $5. Know the facts. Know what happened here. These are incontrovertible and irrefutable.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Thomas Farnan, TheRussiaLie.com. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the National Pulse. It's at @TFarnanLaw, by the way, on Twitter if you want to follow Thomas. Make sure you're tuned in here on America's Voice, Real America's Voice, tonight at 8 p.m. and all through the debate and for post-game analysis. In the meantime, I'm Raheem Kassam, signing off. We'll see you later today.